Hi everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be making a positive art journal muse in my Large Illusions journal, and this is based on the artwork of Tamara Laporte, or Willowing, which you'll find on YouTube and on the internet. This is part of her Life Book Summit activity, and it was a beautiful activity. It's really sort of simple to do, but I had lots of fun doing it. I sort of went in my own little direction with it. So I started off really simply with a circle shape for the face. So that's one of her key characteristics of her face, so they're really round. And then drew a really simple body, just using the shapes. Now I'm not very good at arms or hands, so I chose to have my hands stuck behind the person's back, so I didn't need to worry about them. And I did the face mapping with the drawing the half lines, half, and then down the bottom you divide it into quarters and then eighths. So the lips are actually quite low down on the face, so much lower down than you expect. I also made the eyes really large. And a lot of the drawing of the face I have sort of learnt not only from her, but from James Luke Burke Creative. So if you check out some of his art journaling, or how to draw faces on YouTube, you'll get some really cool ideas. I like drawing those really big eyes. They just appeal to me. Now I'm drawing using a Stabilo All pencil, and I do that deliberately because it is a water-soluble pencil, and you can see there I sort of started to put on the paint for the face. This is the Jane Davenport face paints, which are very matte. And then I just decided to paint all over it. And I'd spent all that time drawing out the face, which I actually quite liked. But it was just for me to get an idea of where everything was and what to do. So once I'd done it once, I knew I could sort of do it again. And it's not going to be exactly the same, but it's going to be roughly the same, and everything's in the right place. But one reason I really like using the Stabilo All pencil is you can already see from the background is when it water activates, I've already shaded the paint in the background in those sort of darker areas where they need to be. So it's a really cool way of adding in some shading and then painting over the top that you don't really need to think about. So as I was doing this, the point of the exercise, I suppose, was to create this doll, and you do all this writing in the background about positivity and all those different bits and pieces. I'm not really that sort of person, I have to say. I am somewhat. I do my journaling when I need to and when I need to get stuff out, but I just really liked the doll. But I decided I want to put a message in the hair of the doll, and this is a technique, if you follow my channel, I've done before, and it's one that I really love doing, particularly for collage bits and pieces, is getting a piece of deli paper or tissue paper and stenciling over the top. Now I really love text stencils to do this, or text in the background, because it's so graphic. You can tear it up, but you've just got these beautiful graphic shapes in the background. So that's what I was doing with that. So I've just used the ruby paint, and I've chose that deliberately because one of my favorite color combinations is turquoise or sky blue with red. They're just, that sort of blue and red really pop against each other, and they're just beautiful. So now I'm going back into my doll and I'm collaging over the body. Again, you can see I've sort of covered over some of those lines I've already drawn out, and I'm just repainting them in again. Those lines to begin with aren't permanent, they're just there as guides to help me sort of put this piece together. If I'd been really sensible, I would have transferred over the measurements to do this in a much better way. I don't know how I could have done that, but this is a bit of guess and check when I was doing it, but I kind of like it because again it looks a little bit bitsy as I'm putting them down. So I'm just putting down some collage pieces. So I've got this vintage text over the top of my music paper, and the music paper I again coloured using the leftover red paint I had, and now I'm just going in and putting in the red dress. So as I said, I really love that really stark contrast between the red and the blue. And as I was doing it, I was sort of wondering how the words in the background and the tissue paper in particular were going to work, because I thought having the white of the tissue paper might dull this down somewhat, but in the end it ended up being really, really effective. Now I'm going in with, again, a blue to put in the eyes, and then the white paint pen to put in the whites of the eyes. And I've always found, no matter what you're drawing, as soon as you put in the whites of the eyes and the little catch lights, it suddenly brings your picture to life, even if it's not realistic, like this painting. As soon as you do that, it just does something to the page, and it becomes a complete focus for your eyes as they go. So this is the fun, mindless part of this process. It was just tearing up the collage paper that I made into lots and lots of different smaller pieces, putting them upside down all sorts of ways, and just tearing them around to fit into the hair. Now, I'm not a particularly brilliant person for drawing hair, which is partly why I chose to do this instead. I thought it'd be quite interesting and give the texture I wanted without having to actually paint in hair. And it worked really, really well. The other thing I was really, really happy about was the by having the different directions of the text going different ways, it sort of added to that flow of the hair much more than if I could have done this painting. One thing that comes up as a problem in the end, you can see some of that matte gel medium I actually painted over the face, over the pale part of the face. Now, what I didn't realise is when I usually use acrylic paints, I use my Dina Wakley paints, and obviously because they're made by the same company, the Dina Wakley paints and the Dina Wakley gel medium dry to the same matte finish and have never really been an issue. The Jane Davenport portrait set, which is what I used for the face, is a lot matter. So the gel medium actually gave it sort of a bit of a gloss finish, and when I go in a little while with some colour pencils over the top, it made it really difficult to use colour pencils over. So just be aware, usually with my artwork I'm very slapdash with my putting glue over, because I know it dries clear in the end. In this case it didn't quite work for me. The two little white strips you can see in there, those are the little bits I trimmed off the edge of the music, and I quite liked how they gave some direction to the hair, so I chucked those in as well. I did draw in a bow and a little band. In the end I decided I didn't want to use those, or I couldn't quite work out how I was going to use them, more to the point, so I left those out. So I'm just going back in with the paint and adding a little bit more of the face colour skin tone to it. And I'm going in with my magic wands to add in some of the highlights and shadows. Now you can see here I've had to go back in with the paint and sort of paint over where I put the matte medium, so I've got a little bit of tooth back again, and because it was still a little bit damp, it was sort of moving the pencil. So just be aware, I'm not very patient, as those people who have followed the channel for a little while might know. I tend to use my heat gun a lot to dry it. Probably if I'd left it overnight and came back to it the next day, it would have worked better. But it worked. It was okay. And for me, while I enjoyed drawing the face, my main thing about this is doing the hair and getting those words in the hair. You can see I'm going back in with my Stabilo All Pencil too to add a little bit of shading to the face, and that just pops it out of the page and just gives that depth of colour to what you're doing. I'm also going over my dress and my clothes again just to pop them out from the page and just make them a little bit more interesting, add in all the small details that I wanted. Going in, adding in some eyebrows because they're pretty important, and then just going through the hair really, really loosely with my pencil, just to sort of give it a bit of an outline and a bit of a flow to where the hair is going. Now you could use any pencil for this. You could use a paint pen if you wanted to. Just this pencil I really enjoy using because I can move it if I want to. The other thing that I like putting in are some eyelashes, just to again frame the eyes, and I'm using a red Stabilo All Pencil to put in the cheeks and to put in the lips. So the red that I had in the other tin of pencils just wasn't red enough for me, so I just wanted to put in the Stabilo All Pencil. It's also a softer, waxier pencil, not waxier, it's a softer pencil, creamier, I suppose. It stays on the page a little bit more, I suppose, because it is water soluble, so it's just got that little different texture to it. So when I finished doing my doll, I really liked it, but I had an awful lot of space around the outside of the doll that I wanted to do something with. So I decided to add some texture into the background. The first thing I'm doing is going in with a slightly deeper turquoise colour. I think this one's Ocean by Dina Wakley, and just using this leaf stencil in the background to go around it. Now, this page, I suppose, because I wanted to be really positive and bright and happy, I wanted to use all the things I really love on this page. So blue and turquoise, turquoise and red is one of my favourite colour combinations. Those people who follow this channel before know that this stencil has fast become one of my favourites, so I wanted to put this stencil on the page, which is why I put the leaves in the background, I think, just to sort of add that in, because I'm certainly not a gardener, but I really love this stencil, the graphic nature of it. And also text is huge for me in artwork. No matter what I create, I have text in it in some way, shape or form, whether it's through collage and using vintage text, which I've used on the doll, or writing on my page, or using stencils with writing in it. I always have some form of text on my page, and so this page kind of captures all the things that I love about doing art journaling, and it made it such a fun piece to make, and quite an easy piece to make, because I didn't really need to think about it. I just needed to grab my favourite things and my favourite colours to create it. So it was a very relaxing piece to make as well. So once I finished stenciling in the white, I decided I wanted to put in a little heart, so I used my washi tape to put the little heart in. And the writing down the bottom, I had the incredible soul, so I had some other words from that collage sheet and I tore it out. I just needed something else, so I've got totally incredible soul now. Going in, so just brightening up the eyes, finishing those off, and then I'm going to stamp in my quote. And I decided after lots of thinking about this, so I'm just putting in some highlights using a fine white pen, and it's spread somewhat, so I'm just wiping it off and going in again. And that's a good thing about paint pens and using acrylics. Once they're heat set, they are permanent, so that if you do make a mess while it's still wet, you can wipe it off with a wet wipe, which gives you a little bit of room for if you make any errors. So this is a really fine white paint pen. It's actually one of the metal tip ones, which I don't tend to use very often. I usually use the bullet tip ones, so yeah, it does work. So I'm just going in with some of the Tim Holtz foam stamps to spell out my message, which is create with courage, which is a message I like to tell myself a lot, because sometimes you just need to create, and if you make something beautiful, you make something beautiful, and if you make a mess, you make a mess. And at the very beginning of this video, you saw me when I first put the paint down, all the pencil work that I had before smeared and bled in, which gave me all those shadows that I wanted on my page, but it would have been good if I could have kept it. You could see me originally putting the paint around the eyes and so on, so I could keep those. But if you create with courage, you've done it once before, you know you can do it again. So it's all that sort of positive self-talk, telling yourself that, you know, you can do this, it's okay, and if you make a mess, that's okay too, because you've learnt something from it. The final thing that I'm going to do is just add a little bit of white onto my letters just to pop them out, and you can see I've just moved the shadow in slightly, so I've got a little bit of black around it. So this is the final page. It was lots of fun to create. Thank you again for the inspiration from Willowing, or for Tamara Laporte. So please check her stuff out on Instagram and on Facebook. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye for now.